Yeah, it's not the most flattering back. Okay.
That's great.
So far, we just got Eileen. Angela. I'm going to wait a second before admitting.
Let's go here.
This is, you know, you might have to just post it on my computer. If you want to.
I don't know why it's doing this.
It sucks. You want me to pull everything up on mine?
Well, just for now, let's just do the
Well, we only have a couple of people in the waiting room. I'm good. You want me to?
yeah. Let's just go ahead and start, and then we'll play the video. I think it's gonna turn out okay here, but I do need to.
Okay, here you go. We're admitting everyone.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Hello, Ivan. This is Fernando. I'm a local real estate professional here in the Sacramento area. I'll give you a quick call today just to check in. I see here that you have requested previously information on a house in the Sacramento area, and I want to touch base.
It's Fernando. I just unmuted him. All right.
Who we got in here?
Our sound's on.
We good? Oh, that's all right. Hey, everybody. How we doing? We're gonna go ahead and start the Altos research for today. And then we're gonna move into the methods of valuation and market statistics and talk a little bit about the language of real estate. And so while we're admitting people, looks like we only have about 8 or 9. We'll go ahead and play the video. It's a little bit longer than normal at 10 minutes today. So with that being said, I'm going to share screen, and there we go. And maximize it. And boom, here we go.
It's now the second half of the year. The July 4th holiday each year marks the seasonal peak for the residential real estate market as buyer demand begins to subside as the summer grows older. The new school year looms in front of us. So what does that mean for the ultra hot market of 2021? How should you read like maybe conflicting messages in the media that you're bound to hear about the market this summer? When we talk, for example, about the potential of foreclosures, pandemic-related foreclosures coming to market, we draw a lot of opinions, a lot of comments from viewers. So no matter what your hypothesis is for how the hot real estate market is ultimately going to shake out, we're here to provide the most detailed immediate data so that you can test your hypothesis in real time. I also try to guide you on how to interpret the other data that you'll see in the coming months. Each week, Altos tracks every home for sale in the country, all the pricing, all the changes in pricing, and we present this data so you can have it before it becomes available through traditional data channels or the headlines. It's now Tuesday, July 6th, 2021. Happy Independence Day, everyone. Here's the data for the week. The available inventory of unsold picked up again this week. It's a very healthy looking curve for the market. Each year, available inventory peaks in August. Normally, we'd have 1 million or so single family homes on the market right now. Earlier in the decade, that was closer to 1.5 million. Right now, there are only 374,000 homes available. For those of you who are anticipating foreclosures or the potential wave of supply coming to market to drive prices down, it just seems very, very unlikely that we can get to a situation of oversupply anytime soon. Remember, a healthy market would be 1 million homes. A buyer's market conditions would be more like, 1.5 million homes. It'll be fun this year to see which week is actually the peak of our inventory. We've got 6 or 8 weeks of climbing inventory to go still. Peak somewhere around 400,000 single family homes. While I expected mortgage rates to be climbing this year to slow demand and increase supply, we simply have not seen rates climb at all yet. So when rates climb eventually, be sure to pay attention here to see how quickly demand changes. But is the red hot demand backing off at all? So we keep hearing anecdotes of buyers getting cold feet, especially in the new construction markets, but man, it sure does not show up in the data. Of 104,000 properties that came to market this week, 23% of those sold immediately, with 80,000 or so sticking around for a week or two. The pace is maybe slightly less insane than March of this year, as the frenzy was at its peak. But there are so many buyers still gobbling up everything as fast as they can. This is both, by the way, individual and institutional capital. It's hard for me to look at the data and find anything bearish yet for home prices. As I said, when rates rise, this will be another leading indicator for sales and prices. So keep your eye on this immediate sales metric. That brings us to pricing. Median price of single family homes in the US stayed steady this week at $399,000. You can see the red line here. Each year we sit at this price plateau for the duration of the summer. All the price gains in the market happen really in the first and early second quarter. This year's Q1 and Q2 were especially strong for pricing. As I said, the peak of the market, was March and April. But the signal to pay attention to here is the price of the new listing. So that's the dotted green line here in this chart. Normally by July, the listings that are coming to market have to be priced lower, a bit lower, to make sure they move by the end of the summer. This data is such a marvelous example of what we call the wisdom of the crowds. Home sellers and listing agents know exactly where the demand is, and they price accordingly. So right now, we know they still have a ton of pricing power. So this is what they are telling us. They know this because they hold an open house and a zillion people show up, or they know how to price their next listing because the last one last week had 20 bidders. So the dotted green line here shows us very clear. We have continued unseasonably strong pricing. At $369,900, the median price of the new listings has not fallen in 10 weeks. Normally by now, listing prices, the new listing prices will have pulled back by 35%. So think of it this way: in normal years, let's say it takes an average of 8 weeks to sell your house. 8 weeks from now, school is starting. So to move it more quickly in normal years, we've started to price lower. This year, though, a quarter of the houses are selling immediately. And the average is only 3 weeks on the market. So why cut my price? But by this notion, by this heuristic, we should see the median price of the new listings, those prices, the dotted line here, start ticking down in August, maybe the second week of August. We'll see how that shakes out exactly, but that's what it looks like right now. So that finally brings us to the year-over-year price changes. If you're interested in the broader trends of housing, this is a good one to follow. Remember that the headlines you'll see are for the home price index, things like the Case-Shiller index or those published by NAR. Those are lagging. They use sales data, so they are by definition backward looking. Case-Shiller, for example, was announced last week. The number is shockingly high, of course. And it's now, it's the 1st of July, and that Case-Shiller index is using data from February, March, and April. You can look at this chart here, the year-over-year price changes. In the real-time data, you'll see the absolute peak is April. So you've got several months, including that April data, in things like the Case-Shiller. So April, of course, has the base effects from the beginning of the pandemic last year. And so that's why it was particularly, price gains were particularly strong in that moment. At this point last year, home prices were rocketing as that demand was just taking off for the pandemic. And so now we start to get some compression. Prices are holding strong now, but they were gaining last year. So year-over-year home price gains are very big, and they're at 13.4% over July, prices greater than July of last year. We can see that they'll end the year in this 12 to 13% gain range. I think if you went back and looked, for example, at our videos from late January, early February this year, you'll notice that that's sort of been our forecast for the whole year. You can really see it because the home price gains all happen in that January, February, March, April time. We can already see where the prices will play out for the year at the beginning of the year. So if you were curious to go check that out, I bet you'd find those there. So again, when you want to know where the market is going rather than where it's been, stick around with this active market data set, and we'll try to keep you informed with the latest. Okay, that's all the data we have for the week. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel so you don't miss out on the data. And come to altosresearch.com. There's a link in the description below here. If you need to automate getting local reports to your clients or build the data into your models, that's what we do at Altos Research. So come visit us, and thank you. More next week.
Okay, cool. My host. Okay, cool. So we're going to stop the share screen then. Continue. Yep. Stop share. Okay. All right. I think we've been able to transition properly here. How's everybody doing out there? Got about 13 of us today. Thanks for joining in. And I know SC's got some people who are watching, and a couple of people are watching in our conference room as well. So that's awesome. A couple things I just wanted to share with you before we get fired up here today and this week. I know a lot of people are on vacation. I'll actually be on vacation next week, and we will have you'll have a guest host. Also, we're going to have the breakthrough. Actually, what it is next week, it's the 14th. We're going to have the Breakthrough Broker CEO here on the Zoom, spending about 45 minutes with us talking about the breakthrough broker system, which is something that you guys, it's a product that you guys have associated with your membership as a EXP agent. And I don't know, is anybody out there on the call currently using anything from Breakthrough Broker? You are, okay. Eileen, do you mind sharing 1 minute or 30 seconds about that platform? And also, if you have any questions that you'd like to preload for this guy, I mean, he's the founder, he's the CEO, he's the guy that makes the decision. So bring your questions to this event if you can. But go ahead, Eileen, if you don't mind sharing.
Yeah, sure. So I kind of got started with them. I found them online.
We got to unmute you, I guess. Hang on.
Okay.
Where are you here, Eileen? There you are. No, go ahead.
Okay, so I found them a while back before I came to EXP, and I use them. They have some really great tools, good graphics. You can post a lot of their stuff, onto your social media. They've got like great listing presentations and buyer presentations. They have a whole bunch of stuff that you can just basically, put your info into and serve it up.
Awesome, cool. So yeah, they're going to be here next Friday. I'll be in Cancun on vacation with the family. It's great timing, right? As everything blows up this summer in a good way, we've got vacation scheduled. But nonetheless, we're heading out there. Another thing I wanted to share with you is Brent Gove has re-engineered his YouTube channel, and so if you didn't make it to Cabo, if you didn't make it to, you didn't make it to Scottsdale for those events, and many of the previous events have been recently uploaded, including the last one we did at Devil's Canyon for those folks in the Bay Area. But they've really uploaded and dumped all of those videos in there. So feel free to please go and look at those videos, especially those of you guys who missed the Cabo event, because there's some great speakers and I think even better ones at Scottsdale because more people are able to come. But please take advantage of that. Again, we have in August, we have the Tony Robbins event. So go to brentgove.com if you haven't signed up for that, and get moving on that. And then yesterday, we just sealed the deal for those Bay Area folks, and I'll be sending out a save the date on my social media page. And I know Matthew is working on something this morning for his, but we've secured the date of July 29th. From 12 to 3 at Devil's Canyon, and that will be a 3-hour or 2.5 hour listing clinic, and then we're going to do a half an hour the model explained there. So we've been able to secure that. So if you have anybody who is in the Bay Area, for those Bay Area folks, or even for those Sacramento or Orange County folks that you think should attend, please send them our way. For those of you who are in Sacramento, Kyle Whistle is also doing a local event here that same day. So expect you to try and pick up one of those to go to for growth. That's really it for announcements. Anybody got anything they want to talk about or discuss before we move into the content for today? No? Good. So I really appreciate you guys tuning in on these Wednesday meetings. My time frame to get these, I usually start at about 8 a.m. on these mornings and put the content together and put the slides together and have it ready. And our goal is to get all these PowerPoints and videos published each week to so that you guys can deliver them to your organization. I hope you're taking advantage of that. But as we move forward through the fall and start talking about 2022, which is just crazy to think that we're already more than halfway through this year. We would really like your feedback on Wednesday meetings, what you'd like to see in them, maybe topics that we haven't covered. And we can take this from elementary to very high level, team building and mindset, from doing a CMA, like we're going a little bit deeper than what it's, just a CMA is. But anyway, please be thinking about what you'd like to see in 2022, what you'd like us to roll out, any upgrades to the meeting that you guys, would like to see. We're doing our best here to try and push out and provide as much information, content, and growth as possible. So really could use your help in that. So anyway, if anybody doesn't have anything, we'll move right into the PowerPoint and info for today. Okay. So today's topic, and this is going to be from very elementary to very high level for those of you who are conducting luxury type listings or weird type of valuation, such as commercial property or land, or I think we've listed a couple restaurants even this year. So I'm going to first start talking about a model of valuation, and where it starts with, and many of you may not be familiar with this concept, but it's what we call the language of real estate. And if we were a CFO of some type of business, which hopefully you kind of think you think of yourself in that capacity, but we would want to be talking about what the different number type characteristics look like to get us to our success. And in general, these are some of the things that we look at on a routine basis to determine if we're successful, if we're making profit, how we're growing, what's next for us, how we're going to change our marketing for the upcoming market, or what's trending currently. And we look at these things. Closed sales volume, which tells us, what our average volume for closing is. It really determines where are we working with investors? Are we working with mid-range properties? Are we working with high-level properties? The number of units on average that are closed. This is important. Why? Because you can budget off of these. If I was selling cars, I would say, well, how many cars each month are we going to look at selling? So then I could back in and say, can we spend more money on marketing? Can we spend more money on staff? Can we get an increase? Do we need to order increased cars to keep up with the demand? We would talk about contracts written, which are how many buyers I'm representing, and are those getting accepted? We have those conversations and what those volume look like. So it shares with us what kind of buyers that we're working with. The importance of this is understanding, in part, your current client base. We look at listings sold, and which means how many did we sell and what that volume looks like, and how many we took and what that volume looks like. And and those help define our individual business. And on an annual, monthly, or year-over-year basis, we can look at how our numbers compared to the local board, how those numbers compare to the local MLS, to see if we're beating our competition within the MLS, and how we can utilize that information to create a narrative around why your client should pick you. We can look at how those numbers compare to NAR and CAR, and maybe next week or the week after we can do a little bit of statistics. But it's what are the statistics that NAR is putting out, and we're waiting for the ones I think for 2021 to come out, but are very interesting stats, such as 1 in 5 real estate agents live in California. Did you know that? Which is kind of a crazy stat when we think about our competition and how we're going to beat them. So numbers are power because it's information that we can utilize at our fingertips to change how we're running our business. And then ultimately, how do we compare with other agents at EXP? How do we compare with other agents at Keller Williams? And again, these are stories that can be told. These are the language of real estate that you should have at your fingertips to deliver to your client. And then ultimately, we look at our brokerage or our own internal organization. So I look at you guys and I go, okay, we got X amount of people in the executive representation organization. How many are productive? And what is their per agent productivity? Because again, that helps me to create a financial model around agent attraction, if that makes sense. Right? So that's just in general the language of real estate. Does anybody have any questions on that? Comments, things that you also look at in your business as metrics of success? Okay. So moving on. So then we start, so that as we create this funnel of information and the thought process behind the actual listing market analysis or valuation, we can talk about the listing language of the agent. And those have some similar characteristics, but are maybe more in depth. And there are some leaves off the branches, if you will. So we talk about what is your, if I looked at you, Eileen, I would say, what, Eileen, out of the houses that you sold over the past 5 years, what's your average days on market? And out of the past year, what do those look like? And 6 months, and maybe the past 3 months, how quickly, if I hire you, should I expect the property is a sale? Why is that important? Because it's going to tell me if Eileen's marketing exposure are solid, right? It's going to tell me, is she getting that property exposed? These are stories that need to be told at this listing appointment. Then we can look at list price versus sales price. And this is going to tell me how her marketing strategy, once the pricing hits the market, unfolded. It's also going to tell me if she overpriced the house or underpriced the house on a routine basis. I can look at her average sales price to see where she's selling the most property, in what range, her units written sold, which means how many buyers she represented, her units listed sold, her total volume, which tells me how really what the GCI looks like on an internal level, what the GCI looks like, and overall volume. Then I'm going to look at the listings withdrawn or canceled. And I'm going to say, if I was a good consumer, I would say, and I'm looking at, think about it if you're meeting with your financial planner, right? Hey, if Jeremy's my financial planner and I go, hey, Jeremy, how many clients did you lose last year? What's that going to tell me about his service, about how much money those people made? There's a narrative around it. And so if you can have that in your favor and create a guerrilla warfare around it and say, hey, listen, out of all the listings that I had last year, 100 listings, we only lost one, and that was because of X, Y, and Z. Or you flip that, instead of saying we only lost one, it's we had a 99% closing ratio on the listings that we took. The average, by the way, is about 65%, meaning for every 10 listings that you take, you're only going to close about 6.5% of them. Sorry, for every 100 listings that you take, you're going to close about 65 of them. The other 35, for whatever reason, access, price, condition, location, market timing, or exposure, didn't make it sell. So we can use these numbers to our advantage in planning and also in sharing with our clients. Then we go units reduced. How many listings did I take that had a price reduction last year? Why? Because that means, as a coach, what that's going to tell me is, do you have control of the pricing strategy that you're delivering to your seller? And then we talk about written contracts canceled, which means how many buyers do we represent who we got into escrow that ultimately, ended up canceling for whatever reason, loan, property condition, whatever it might be. But the final two in this capacity are we're going to look at the average percentage of commission, which, based on all those sales, what was our average commission and why? Was it 3%, 2%, 2.5%? If you think about this from a financial model, you go, man, if I bump my commission, if I'm doing $40 million in volume and I bump my commission base from an average of 2% to 0.5%, we're talking about 0.5% of 40 million bucks, which is quite a bit of money, So these are all coaching metrics and conversations that you can use as a model to grow your business and have conversations with the sellers that you're meeting with. Again, it's these narratives and conversations and stories that are really the art of the sell, that get you to the point where they're committed not only to using your, going back to conversational layering, you not only committed to using you, not only committing to being very, what's the word I'm looking for? Sorry, going blank. Committed to using your marketing strategy. What's that? Credible. You're credible, right? Credibility. So you've created this credibility with the stories that you're telling, but then now we're moving through these topics of conversation to get actually to the point of having them confident in your pricing strategy. And so ultimately we get to the language of the listing. So now we're actually talking, so we've gone from real estate just in general to being a listing agent and your specific numbers on a wide scale to let's talk about this specific listing. And these would be topics such as what's the square footage look like? What's the lot size look like and the property type and the tax assessed value and relationship and the substitution and the square footage and what I call meaning, and there's a difference here, especially now with a lot of off-market properties selling. You got to dive in and understand what the tax looks like, what the tax sales look like, which are not recorded MLS sales. And then there's open source, what I call, which is what somebody is anticipating on Zillow and Trulia. And you should probably have those numbers identified. I do, and also a potential. You can now go into Zillow and you can almost determine what offer price they're going to give. Maybe you can I just sent an email out yesterday to the guys at Express Offers. We have an off-market deal coming, and I wanted to see if they would take a look at it before I go to the listing presentation, just so that I could have that in my hip pocket to say, well, if you want to sell off-market, here's an immediate offer for you. So we want to look at those Zillow and Trulia, not only values, but the iBuyer information that may be coming from Opendoor and Zillow. And I think Realtor.com has just added an ability to make an offer immediately too, somebody was saying, or if not, it's coming. And we look at the list price versus sales price and for that neighborhood, hey, Hal, I'm going to list this property in Orange County. Where should we list and what is it going to sell at? Anticipated days on market. And then we should be delivering the estimated list price to the client and also the estimated sales price. Hey, this property we're going to list it at 139 and we should anticipate offers coming in at 1.5. And then, you can deliver to them a repaired value versus an as-is value. Other things to look at within this listing language is the median list price for that neighborhood, the number of price decreases or increases, the number of properties coming back to the market, relisted, withdrawn, or canceled, the current unit inventory in that market area. For instance, hey, Bob, we've got 5 active listings in our market area in this price range. Those would be properties that we would want to take a look at to see what the current competition looks like. We could also talk about rent percent increases or decreases in that specific neighborhood, because rent calculations as a cost income approach also has a bearing on value. And then ultimately we can talk about the market action index. Is this a seller's market or a buyer's market? So these are all concepts that we want to have. Somebody's trying to get in. These are all concepts that we want to have in our back pocket to funnel down into that specific listing. And then before understanding or before going into the methods of valuation, we would talk about some different terms on the right, which are I suggest you upgrade your vocabulary, and you can go and read the appraisal manual guide that we all took when we got our real estate class. But what does utility mean, and scarcity and absorption? These are all dynamic words that make you sound like a market professional instead of using just complete supply and demand. And then the main 5 methods of valuation that an appraisal will use based on all property types are the sales comparison, which is most close to what we call the CMA, comparative market analysis. And then we talk about a cost approach, which could be land value plus building value. And then we talk about income capitalization, which is typically used on rental properties and broken down to a percentage. So for instance, we would say, hey, this property is going to yield a market cap of 6 or 7%, which means we're going to make that much on our initial investment. And then we talk about price per square foot, which, that's just broken down to a normal price per square foot of things that are active or selling in the immediate market area. and then, you know, in a replacement cost or a construction cost. So those would be some methods. There's about 5 more, 10 more, about 8 more, I think is really what it looks like. But these are going to be most prevalent to us. And then many of you have seen this before, and I'm going to take you in and show you where to find it if you can. And I'm going to actually blow it up a little bit here so you can see it a little bit better. But this would be the actual form that when I go to a listing presentation, I want to fill out with the client. Why do you think it's important to fill this out with the client? Somebody, please help me out there. It's
Well, it shows you're engaged.
Yeah, do you remember a few weeks ago we were talking about the Thomas Jefferson close? And what Thomas Jefferson close is you do a pros and cons. And the reason that you do that is you get their buy-in on what you're trying to do. You understand that a listing appointment, that's all we're trying to do. We're trying to get their buy-in on 4 or 5 different levels, you know, and we've talked about this in the past, whether it's the commission, whether it's hiring you, whether it's staging, whether it's fixing the property up, or at the end, whether it's the valuation, the number that you need, that you know is going to get this house sold for them. That's a mutual beneficial relationship. So if you're sitting down with them and you're getting their buy-in on it, and you're saying, let's talk about this. Let's talk about the square footage. Is this the correct square footage? You know, MLS says this when it sold last, and here's what the tax records say. Is that the right? Yeah, and lot size. Tell me about that. Have you had a survey done? Well, no, but okay, so we're going to rely on the assessor's office. Perfect. And property type. Okay, you know, we know we're a single family, we're a townhome, we're a ranch style. What are we? Okay, great. So you're getting their buy-in on this time. You understand? It's a cycle of sales. If I just went in and said, well, here's what I came up with, I'm missing out on the availability to connect and to get them in an agreeable fashion, knocking down those roadblocks until I say, you can see that, you know, based on what we've gone through, that the correct estimated list price is X. Would you agree? Yeah, well, I'm feeling this and that. Okay, let's talk about it. That's an objection. That's a formal objection after I've taken them through a system, which empirically I know will 90% of the time get me the list price that I want, right? And then so we can go, okay, let's talk about tax assessed value. You know, here we go. It's fodder for conversation. So I see that based on the tax assessors that you guys refinance, that you put it into a trust, that you this, that you that. I can get their buy-in on the conversation. The conversation is the most important part of this element. Next, substitution. Are you familiar with what the substitution method is? Also known as, we just talked about it, sales comparison. And that means house X next door sold, very similar to your house, house Y. And we look at, in real estate, appraisers look at, and lenders look at what's transacted in the past to give an evaluation on what's currently the market value for this property. And here's what I would say, and here's a follow-up dialogue for that, which is basically, guys, we can't look in our market right now because it's appreciating so rapidly. We can't look behind us. We have to look in front of us and anticipate by the time the house gets on the market what it's going to be worth. And appraisers are doing that also right now. There's a little bit of flexibility for them to do that. And then we move into square footage as far as the MLS. And this is where I would bring the CMA, the comparative market analysis out now. And I'm going to show you what that is in a moment, but I bring the CMA out and say, okay, here's the square footage of what's sold in the MLS. And here's what's sold in Realist. And Realist has this comparative market data for you. And it'll also share with you what that median price per square foot is. Sometimes they'll give you a real AVM in there, which is, you guys know what an AVM is? Some of you new folks. AVM is an automated
valuation model.
Boom, thank you. You broke the barrier on talking today. No, I'm joking. Thanks, Eileen and Lee. 2 birds of a feather right there. Yes, it's an AVM. So what does that look like? You know, and Realist sometimes in certain neighborhoods will give us an AVM, but for those new agents, an AVM is just an immediate valuation check on the market, almost like a Zillow, you know, pool, but relies not on all the other algorithms, relies on complete market data of closed sales. And sometimes I've been getting a lot of appraisal waivers for buyers lately. And sometimes I'm getting back from the lender that, hey, we've got the real AVM in and they're good. We're getting the appraisal waiver. So if there is that, you want to pump that in here. And then ultimately, there's the white elephant in the room, so to speak, is Zillow and Trulia and whatever valuation that they come up with. And usually the concept that I talk about in regards to this is in regards to negotiation. You see, again, it's a conversation with them, right? And so I'm going to say something to the point like, as a student of negotiation, I familiarize myself with different tactics. Your clients want to know that you're a great negotiator. And so I'll typically say something along the lines of, are you familiar with what an anchor point is in regards to negotiation? You guys know what an anchor point is? I'm asking you out there in team world. Anybody know? Come on, I can't see you all. Okay. So what an anchor point is in regards to negotiation, sorry, is I can't see you guys now. Okay, there we go. Sorry. An anchor point is a thought of where value needs to be based on outside sources. So in this point, in this conversation, Zillow says my property is worth 500,000. You listed at 600,000. Now that's a sticking anchor point for negotiation. The buyer has been brainwashed, if you will, to think that based on what Zillow's valuation is, it's only worth 500,000. So my job now is to say, here's how we dispatch the anchor. Here's how we disintegrate the anchor point for this buyer, because I'm looking on Zillow and Trulia right now, and they're telling me the property is worth 500,000. So my job, Mr. Seller, is to explain to the market, to bring value to the property, to get so much exposure that that anchor point is blown away. And that's really how you address that issue. That's how the conversation I have around Zillow and Trulia. And then ultimately we roll into sales price versus list price percentage. So Mr. Seller, for your neighborhood in Belmont right now, we're at 106% of list price versus sales price. Why is that? That's because most of the time we're listing the property at about 97% of list price, and because it creates the most exposure for the property and we're getting it bid up. Or there's just so much demand, or there's lack of inventory that buyers currently are willing to pay 6% over market value. You create that narrative around you. And then what's the days on market? Ultimately, what my estimated list price looks like and what my estimated sales price would be. So I'm going in there and I look at myself like an attorney, and I'm writing the way that we're going to present this to the jury and to the judge so that we win our case. And this is prompted by going to multiple listing appointments. The reason I use this form is because I went to multiple listing appointments and I used to just go in with the CMA. And when a buyer has, and I wouldn't go through this process, when a seller, has a number in their head, and it can become an anchor point for you to negotiate that point out of a seller's head. Meaning, hey man, my neighbor told me my property is worth X. My wife told me my property is worth, my boss told me that I could get at least X for this house. That is also an anchor point, right? So we've got to be able to combat those. We've got to be able to combat those anchor points in many different capacities. But the reason I created this is because now I can share with them that the market, based on all of these methods, is putting us in a certain price point, a certain circle, a certain bullseye, if you will, of where the property is going to sell. And it helps me to leverage information to get them to my point, to my desired, if you will, list price. And we talked about this last week going into it before I go in and show you some specific case studies, but we talked about this last week. In addition to knowing this information and the language of real estate, we've got to be looking at those hot sheets and predictive numbers and loan programs and rates and what's happening each week to those, and understanding the neighborhoods, what's selling, what's not, why isn't it selling, the price trends in different properties. And that gives us or creates confidence in us in when it comes time to having deliver to deliver this valuation data. Going back to this, my suggestion would be you guys do 3 things for your listing appointments. And if you can, number 1, create this listing language of the agent for you. And this says, and if you need a larger market term, go back so you have a great pond to fish in for these numbers. If these don't work for you, use numbers for your team. If they don't work for the team, use numbers for EXP. You can run a CMA for all EXP properties that have sold over the past 3 months and really get this type of information. So number 1, create this listing language for the agent. Number 2, create a narrative around your last listing. And this is something I've got on my to-do list, but it just says that based on my last listing, here's what happened. Here's what the staging looks like. Here's what the numbers on people who looked at it online look like. Here's what the numbers of showings. Here's the number of offers. Here's what the offers look like. And here's what we ended up closing it. So that would be the second thing. And then number 3, you've got to use, you've got to have a narrative around how you're going to help them succeed financially in not only in real estate, but just, well, mainly in real estate, but more importantly, over time. And that's that conversation of, I don't want to be, I'm going in and I'm saying, first thing I'm saying at the listing appointment is what? Hey, I don't want you to think of me as a wham bam, thank you, ma'am, real estate agent. Come up with your own narrative around that. But looking like, hey, I'm going to be your counselor in real estate for, as a long-term client, and we're going to make a lot of money together. And we're going to talk about investment properties and when to refinance and all those types of things. So those are the 3 things I suggest you create or have narratives around in your listing binder or booklet. Okay, so now I'm going to stop the screen. Any questions on any of this information? Lee, Angela, Jeremy? No. Really? Okay. Alexander, I see you out there. Okay, so I'm going to stop the share. And we're going to go look at a different screen here. First of all, if you need to know where the methods evaluation form is, it's in the executive representation team and tribe. And you can go down here. We've uploaded all these files in here, and it's right here, listing exhibit D, which is called valuation data. Download it, make it your own. Number 2, there is a listing cover page in there that has a lot of information in regards to what you should bring to every listing presentation. And it's just an easy form, print it out, put it at the top of your listing. And then there's some other great stuff in here in regards to listing. One of them is objection handling. And so go in here, use the information we've uploaded. It's from 20 years of information. There's 2 or 3 pages of information in there. I'm gonna shut that down. So, and that can be found, if you don't know how to get to Workplace, you really should, but you can get into Workplace through Enterprise.
Hey, Sean, I do have a question.
Okay.
I mean, this is great information, and I will be using a lot of this going forward. The main problem that I seem to have when I'm putting together a CMA is valuating the adjustments for the comps. And I'm finding that we don't have a lot of inventory for comps, and especially along the coast, there's a lot of unique properties. So like, I mean, where do you find the information to adjust a value for an extra bathroom, or adjust a value for an updated kitchen, or an extra bedroom? I can't seem to really find that anywhere. It's just the strangest thing. I mean, I had a conversation with an appraiser, and she said, oh yeah, you can call me anytime and I'll give you that information, but we haven't really created that relationship. She hasn't called me back. It seems like that information should be so readily available to our industry, but it isn't.
I think I think why it's not an industry fixed number. And here's what I mean. The difference between adding a bathroom here in Lincoln to adding a bathroom in Pacifica or San Francisco is going to be way different. But what you should do is try and break it, if you can, break it down to a price per square foot and put the hedged amount, put that hedged amount in there. That would be one way of doing it. But you can go, it's tough right now because the market is appreciating so much. But, I mean, shit, we're seeing things here sell it. We listed a place at like 1.2, and we never thought we would go up to 1.32, went up 120,000. And in those capacity, in this market, at least now, it becomes, Lee, and this is kind of weird to say, but it becomes a gut feeling.
That's
It-
what
It,
I seem to.
it becomes okay, I'm going to get all this information and deliver it to you. And here's, and I'm even having these conversations with sellers right now. Like, normally I would sit down and we would go, hey, X house just sold, or price per square foot, but that's all blown out right now. When we get back to a normal market, this process may make more sense. But the model is, let's see what these valuations look at, and then you run it out and you say, okay, but and those of you who have been in this industry for a long time and sell a lot of listings, you will know there's an art to valuation. There's a gut feeling to it. And you say, okay, I'm going to use the model of, here's the base model of this car, and we're going to soup it up based on what I know, based on my knowledge and experience, based on what I'm seeing in the market, and based on what's happening in the neighborhood and what I'm hearing from, economists, and what I'm seeing with demand and what's going on with interest rates, and all those gut numbers, which is why it's so important to understand the hot sheet, are super important in being able to evaluate, what the property is going to end up selling at. But it's a great question. And who else do we have on here? We've got Angela and Eileen. I don't know if you want to chime in at all and mention, help Lee out in that, because you're in that specific marketplace. But it really is, I'm going to follow the baseline model of what we've just talked about, and then I'm going to inject the gut feeling and say, hey, I think with another bathroom, and this is part of it too, with fixing up the house or staging the house, or and those are knowing immediate demand. Because if you're having somebody invest $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 on a new kitchen without empiric evidence of how they're going to get that dollar for dollar back, it makes it really tough unless you have this strong gut interaction and can influence them based on that gut interaction to spend that money and get the extra valuation or the extra price. Eileen, you got, I think you might be on a call or something, but anything else you want to chime in and say in regards to that? No. Okay. Angela? No. And there probably is, like, people around here say, okay, 25,000 for a pool, or, but usually it's about, on average, it's about a third of what they're going to, I would say about a third of what they're going to invest, they'll get actually back in overprice. So I'm going to spend, for instance here, I'm going to spend $60,000 on a pool in Lincoln. I'm probably only going to get that back. I'm only going to get about 20,000 of that back over the market comparables, or at a valuation or an appraisal method. There's also that, that dichotomy right now between what appraised value is and what market value is. Two completely different things, right? So we're looking at, typically in a normal market or a seller's market, we're looking at, what's this property going to appraise at? Because normally that's all a buyer is going to pay for it. Right now, market value is immediately what a buyer is willing to pay over appraised value, regardless of what it's appraising at. And that's the gut feeling that comes on, man, what's going to happen to prices here? What am I hearing? This is why it's so important to watch those hot sheets every day and tune into Altos research and understand, because the market can change like that. I can remember back in, what was it, 2018, in one day we had an interest rate drop. The interest rate increased by 1%, and it completely wiped out and changed the market almost overnight. Right. And so we've got to be, but here's the kicker to that. There were tickers of information deposited letting us know that was going to happen. A lot of people just didn't know, and it affected their clients dramatically if they wouldn't have locked a rate. Imagine rates going up 1% overnight, and you're in contract and you hadn't locked your rate. That payment changes dramatically, especially in your neck of the woods. Eileen and Angela and Lee, because you know, valuations are the prices are so high. So you know, if you have specific questions like that, I'm sure, you know, whether it's Eileen or myself or Matthew, we can kind of help you when you're sitting down and doing the valuation. If you give us a little bit of time to say, hey, what would it look like if we took this property in Pacifica and added, you know, whatever, 1,000 square feet, or remodeled the bathroom, or fixed up the kitchen, or, you know, replaced the roof, or and sometimes there's a difference between value and sellability. And here's what I mean by that. You've got two Ferraris and they're the same year, they've got the same miles. The one has been detailed out, polished up, tires look great, shiny, glass is polished, and the other one has just, you know, run a race through a dirt track. And you're at the dealership. Which one are you going to buy? You're going to buy the one that's shined up, right? Even though the valuation of the two are still the same. And so sometimes that's why we suggest, you know, in a normal market or one that's not compressed or chaotic for buyers, we're suggesting let's stage it. Let's clean the windows. Let's put a new roof on. Let's, you know, or a new shingle on. Let's power wash it. Let's do all these things, not necessarily because it's going to increase it in value, but because when given the opportunity of two or three or four or five or more of the same typical type of house, they're going to pick the one that's show ready and ready to move. And so that's another bit of a marketing thought process, the difference between market value and sellability. So I don't know. Anybody else have anything to say in regards to that? You could take that. If you could.
Only that Lee is really good when it comes to meeting the appraiser and bracketing and doing all this sort of stuff and talking about the value. And he's helped me out a few times when I've been out of town or busy, and he does a really great job of pulling all that stuff together. So that's why he's so concerned and wants to know how much would this cost and that cost. But he does a fantastic job with that.
Good job. Good job. And one of the other things that we've been doing for two reasons lately when I've been going to the listings is I've been requiring that they give me a list of all the upgrades, all the specifics, amenities of the house. Not only so that I have that to put in the MLS, and have at the open house, but also to deliver that in addition to the comparables that we have to the appraiser when I'm representing the buyer. Just really helps out. And you're getting them bought in on how to market the house too. You know, oftentimes you create this wonderful narrative and you think, man, that looks great. And then they come back and they go, oh, you missed this, you didn't do this, you neglected that. And these are really important things to them. So anyway, that's just a little bit of information for fodder. We got about 4 minutes left here. So I'm just going to go in and share with you, you know, you guys can all use Altos Research. It's actually a free tool to get information from right now. You don't even have to subscribe. You can go in and just pull the report and then it'll actually give you that information. But these are when we're back in when I was back in the slide talking about, you know, the market statistics, it gives you this just a nice illustration of what's happening in regards to inventory and increases and decreases and relisted houses. And then you should also have this collaborative talk around the quartiles of the property. You know, hey, in Lincoln currently we have 4 different types of property within this single family world. We really have 4 different types of properties because there are 4 different types of buyers who are in these different ranges. And so use the Altos Research, use car information. I know Samcar has wonderful monthly reports that you can use and print out in your listing consultation that give you these numbers, like I was talking about, absorption rate and days on market. And then, you know, it was down earlier. I'm not sure if it's back up again, but oh, it's going to work. So I'm just going to pull this property, 1491 Ivy. So I use this comparable data within Realist to generate the tax report, because this is going to tell me, let's see if there's any in here. This is going to tell most of the ones without pictures sold off market. Okay, so it's going to tell me which ones sold off market and which ones didn't, and it's going to pump out a value projected by square foot for me. And I can go in and I can edit these very, very simply by deselecting them, come back, and create a narrative again around where I want the price to be, where I want the property to be priced at, whether it's lower or higher. Also, this will tell you your market trends for that specific neighborhood. So, you know, within those specific sales, here's what they look like. And it gives me closed sales, medium sale number, of which we were talking about in regards to the language of real estate. How many actively listings and days to market and median sales price per square foot. And it gives me all of these charts, which I can share to those analytical people. Median price per square foot. I think it used to give us see number of tax sales, change in sales activity, number of sales in the MLS. It gives us a lot of information that we can use to complete that full method of valuation and that valuation packet. Okay. So it's 11:59 and we're going to wrap up. So appreciate you guys being on the call. Take advantage of the YouTube channel. We'll send this PowerPoint out with the recording later. Next week will be Breakthrough Broker. 29th, Thursday the 29th, will be in San Mateo at San Carlos. It's at Devil's Canyon from 12 to 3. Start sending the invites out. And I think that's it. Appreciate you guys spending the hour with me. See ya.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.